Wow. Thank you all for coming. My name is Carolyn Terry. I'm the co-president of our PTA here at East Quogue and a concerned parent. I would like to welcome you to East Quogue Elementary School for this educational forum. I welcome you specifically to our school because these forums are not typically held in school buildings. It's actually pretty unheard of. We are here because our administration, Superintendent Les Black, Principal Robert Long, and our Board of Education are people who are willing to stand up for children and to allow parents their right to free speech. I would like to thank them for giving us the opportunity to have this meeting. I would also like to thank them for the work that they are doing on a resolution against high-stakes testing. I'm hopeful that that resolution will be passed at the next Board of Education meeting. Tonight we have our county legislator, Jay Schneiderman, here. Schneiderman, I apologize. And we also have our Assemblyman, Mr. Fred Thiel. Thank you so much for coming. Before I ask Mr. Long to come up, I'd just like to tell you how it's going to go tonight. We have a couple of speakers. After they are finished speaking, we will have, there will be a time for questions. And so we're going to ask if you do have a question, if you would come up to the podium to ask your question so everyone can hear you. We have CTV here recording, so we'd like everybody to be heard. And at that, I would like to welcome Mr. Robert Long, our principal. Thank you.
Okay, contrary to popular opinion, I am not growing this beard until the Common Core is stopped, okay? It's November month. And I'd like to welcome you all to East Quogue School. I hope you've got a chance to take a look at our beautiful facility here. Tonight I am not here as the principal of East Quogue School. I'm here as somebody who is interested in learning, as a parent, as an educator, somebody who's been in the business for almost 25 years. As Carolyn said, we do believe in the right for people to be heard and to speak. We were approached about hosting this forum. Board of Education, Mr. Black and myself were more than willing to do so. Obviously, there has been a big topic of debate. It is so exciting for me to see colleagues from the Riverhead School District, from the West Hampton Beach School District, from the Hampton Bay School District, from the Sag Harbor School District. So, it's nice to collaborate and work together. I hope that this is not the last chance we get to host a meeting like this in the East Quogue School. My hope for tonight is that it's an informational evening. It's one that's peaceful. It's one that's cordial. It's one where we do a lot of listening. I'm going to ask up front as the host of tonight, can we please keep, our emotions in check, and let's do a lot of listening. As Mrs. Terry explained, there will be some chance to ask some questions later, but let's keep in mind what's most important, and that is our children. So again, thanks for coming to our facility tonight. Enjoy the evening. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our parents here in East Quogue, Ms. Cindy McNamara.
Thank you. I would like to start by thanking you all for coming here tonight. Dr. Joe Rella has been called America's superintendent for his tireless effort to get the state education department to stop it, fix it, or scrap it. Unfortunately, Dr. Rella's first job as superintendent of Comstock will keep him from being able to speak here tonight. I had the opportunity to hear him speak at a forum in Levittown last month. One of the things he said that resonates with me the most is this: don't think that this is all a big conspiracy. Conspiracies happen in secret. This is all happening right in front of our eyes. I will be speaking in place of Dr. Rella tonight, and those are some pretty big green lace shoes to fill, so please bear with me. My journey to this forum actually began last year. Like many parents, I commiserated with friends about problems facing my children in school, and I complained about what the school needed to do about it. I didn't go to board meetings or PTA meetings. I didn't do anything about it. My husband and I have always taught our children that they can't complain about something unless they are willing to make an effort to change it. Last year, I realized that I was asking my children to do something that I was failing to do myself. So I started going to school meetings and really looked into why our schools were struggling. The more research I did, the angrier I became. If you Google unfunded mandates in New York State, you will find 3 pages of unfunded federal and state mandates that our schools are forced to comply with. Add to that the magical tax cap, and every year we are forced to cut more teachers, programs, and supplies from our budget. I don't know how things are in your districts, but we're down to bare bones here. Last year, we didn't put a bond measure on the ballot for building or athletic field improvements. We put a referendum on it to take away busing for many of our students so that we could hold on to a few teachers. Now we have the implementation of a whole new curriculum, as well as a new teacher and administration review process to pay for. We didn't need it, we didn't ask for it, but we, the taxpayers, are going to pay for it. The New York State Education Department doesn't think that a lack of funding is the reason our schools are struggling. They want to blame our teachers. I will admit that before I started researching Common Core and APPR, I was on my way down to blame the teacher path as well. Someone in my house is crying or near tears over homework almost nightly, and I'm not ashamed to admit that sometimes it's me. There is nothing more frustrating for a parent than to see your child struggle with something and not have the ability to help them through it. My third grader was struggling with why she had to explain in writing how she got her answer in math after showing her work. I struggled with trying to figure out how she got less credit for doing a math problem and getting the correct answer than she did for explaining how she got a wrong answer. When did math become persuasive writing? Then there were the new ELA dittos that asked her to identify parts of speech in nonfiction text that contained words she could barely pronounce, let alone knew the meaning of. My 11-year-old sixth grader said to me last week, "I used to love guided reading and writing workshops. I wish we could get that back because now in ELA, we read out of a textbook and our writing is all based on prompts. They sucked all the fun and creativity out of it." She, by the way, had to give up recess to participate in band this year because there's too much material to cover for the tests. Welcome to the new and exciting world of Common Core. These poor kids have been thrown in the pool head first without anyone ever teaching them how to swim. But according to Commissioner King, they won't drown. Nope, they will adapt to these rigorous new standards and be college and career ready at the end. Or so he hopes. As if all this was not enough stress on these kids, the State Education Department decided they needed to double down on reforms and added APPR to this. Let me tell you how I found out what APPR was. One Saturday morning, my 8-year-old daughter told me she decided that she wasn't going to play an instrument next year. She has been talking about band since kindergarten, so this totally threw me for a loop. I asked her what made her decide that. She said, "I'm not good at music, I don't know anything." I asked, "What are you talking about? Who told you that you weren't good at music?" She replied, "I took a test in music and I didn't know any of it. I can't do music." I found out that she had taken a SLO, a student learning objective, because the State Education Department has now decided to use our children to grade their teachers. A teacher's review used to be handled by the school administration, but the state has decided that the system wasn't catching enough of the ineffective teachers, so they decided to tie our children's test scores to the teacher's review. Teachers that teach subjects that aren't tied to the state assessments, such as art, music, and gym, must give SLOs to show student growth. They need our children to do poorly on these tests at the beginning of the year so that when they are given again at the end of the year, they can show growth. They don't want to do this to our children, but it's the way the new review process is designed. So against their better judgment, they give our children a final exam at the beginning of the school year. Even though the teachers tell them to just do their best, and these tests don't count towards their grade, these are young children and they want to succeed. They leave these tests feeling stupid. They don't talk to each other about not knowing any of the answers because what if they're the only one? I'm very thankful that my daughter told me about this test so I could reassure her that she wasn't stupid. The look of confusion on her face when I explained to her that she couldn't pass this test because it was designed for her to fail was heartbreaking. Think about this. Your child starts the school year being expected to fail, and then they spend the rest of the year being benchmarked, retested, and assessed. By tying the teacher's review to the state assessments, benchmarks, and SLOs, the State Education Department virtually guarantees that teachers teach to the test. Their livelihood now depends on it. Kathleen Ferguson, the New York State Teacher of the Year, testified before the Senate Education Committee that she did not and could not score a rating of highly effective in the new teacher evaluations. The reason? Her review is now tied to her students' test scores. She teaches second graders with special needs, who are often behind the level of other children in their grade, but the new standards permit no exemptions for her students. Special needs students are held to the same standards and take the same state assessments as everyone else. It is extremely hurtful, and to quote Ms. Ferguson, this system does not make sense. The state education department has taken creativity out of the classroom and turned our schools into a high-stakes testing ground that is not healthy for our children. Governor Cuomo has said that the new standards are just right and that he believes in data. Well, I sent Governor Cuomo a letter and told him that he's not getting his data from my children. They aren't on the state education department payroll, and they aren't lab rats, so they will not be subjected to these hurtful tests simply to feed the data machine. I believe in our schools, and I believe in our teachers. We don't need more mandates, new standards, or more testing. We simply need them to return the teachers, programs, and supplies that were taken from our schools and let our teachers teach. I am blessed to have two very intelligent girls. My wish as their mom is to watch them grow into well-rounded, self-confident women who truly can be anything they want to be. Unfortunately, if we are already stripping them of anything that isn't math or ELA related in elementary school, I fail to see how that will be possible. As a mother of two, I understand that my children have different likes, personalities, and aspirations. I do not want them shoved in a box to hopefully be labeled college ready one day. I will continue to fight Common Core and the high-stakes testing tied to it because I refuse to believe that my children are common, and I believe that they deserve to have a voice in this grand experiment we are performing on them. Tonight, as you listen to these speakers, you will be informed as to what is really happening in our schools, where your child's education is headed, and who is pulling the strings. After you are informed, you will get angry. I ask that you direct this anger in the proper direction and do something about it. Become an advocate for your children. Write letters, make phone calls, educate other parents, go to the community forum with Commissioner King on November 26th, but do not direct your anger towards your children's teachers. Their hands are tied. It's up to us as parents to fight for our children. I truly believe that this is a battle we can win. It's a battle we must win because our children's future depends on it. Thank you. Please welcome Yvonne Gasparino. She's the founder of Stop Common Core New York State. Her website has a wealth of information, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Her Facebook group has over 6,000 members, and that number is growing every day. It is a great group of concerned citizens, parents, teachers, and administrators. If you post a question there, you're sure to get an answer. I have even seen stumped parents post pictures of their children's homework, and teachers in the group have helped them out. If you ever ask what's Common Core or think you know what it is but aren't sure, don't worry. This is a lady who can explain it. Please welcome Yvonne Gasparino. Good evening, everyone. I am Yvonne Gasparino. Obviously, Cindy said so. Thank you, Cindy and Carolyn, for inviting me to speak here. I am from Westchester County, Portchester, New York. That's where I live. So about Common Core, I'll tell you a little bit about me and how we found Common Core. I read an article in the New York Times this past March about the classic literature being changing to informational text, that they were shortchanging the literature in K through 8th by about 50%, and then from 9th through 12th, 70%. And I thought to myself, that's odd. Why would you change the literature that we grew up with, the Mark Twain, the Homer, the Iliad, all the classics that we read in school? I followed it away because my children actually don't attend school in New York, they attend in Connecticut. So I didn't think it really pertained to our children. And I did some more research, and lo and behold, I found a lot of information, and a lot of information that is very overwhelming. When you first find out about it, you, as a mother, you feel helpless because it's your children and you want to help them. So we reached out to some moms out in Utah that we work with. They're the original opposed Common Core moms, Lisa Ellis, Crystal Swansea, and Renee Bradley. They've been working on this for 2 years. They were kind enough to have a video conference with my husband and I at the end of March. Because we sat down and we said we just can't sit down and not do anything. We have friends who go to school in New York. We have nephews that go to school in New York. And we decided to do something. We created our Facebook page, Stop Common Core New York State. And then 3 days later, my husband launched a website, Stop Common Core New York State. And we've been fighting it ever since, staying night, 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. So here's the story about Common Core.
So, what is Common Core State Standards? It's a top-down national mandated education program where 45 states committed to adopt through Race to the Top competitive grant program. States who did not receive money, like our friends up north in Connecticut, still needed to sign on to these standards whether they received money or not. The Race to the Top was created in 2009 by the stimulus bill, the ARA, the American Reinvestment Recovery Act, where $4.35 billion was benchmarked for this competitive grant program. So the states had to commit before the standards were even written. Race to the Top began in spring of 2009 with the Phase 1 application in November of 2009. States only had 2 months to sign on to the applications. The applications were due 2 months later. So as we know, our legislators are not in session November, December, and January. So our state officials had to decide without consulting our legislators to an unfunded, untested mandate. They initially signed a blank page, signing away your child's educational future. There are 2 requirements for Race to the Top. Those 2 requirements are that the states needed to sign on to standards. Now, the standards were not written, remember, when the states signed on in an SLDS. An SLDS is a statewide longitude database system. That is basically they're harvesting your children's personal information. Common Core State Standards is a one-size-fits-all education. It makes no distinction between the child. The child learns the same concepts at the same time, not taking into account the individual child or language differences. I live in Port Chester, New York. We have a multitude of language that's spoken within our school. The Race to the Top had the $4.35 billion benchmark. Out of that money, $360 million were given to 2 testing consortiums. There are 2 testing consortiums in our based here throughout the United States, PARC and SBAC. New York is part of PARC. It's Partnership for Assessment and Readiness for Career in College, and SBAC is Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. There are 19 states that are part of PARC and 24 part of SBAC. So, who created the Common Core State Standards? They were created by the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers. Together they formed Common Core State Standards Initiative, where underneath that umbrella is only ELA and math, nothing else. So Common Core State Standards is just ELA and math. I will note that there are standards for science. They are coming out next year. They are also written by Achieve, the next generation science standards. There's also social study standards as well, that's in draft form. Everything can be found on our website. So the National Governors Association sounds like an official leg of our government, but it's nothing more than a membership for state governors to be part of. In fact, you have to pay to be part of this organization. The Council of Chief State School Officers is another not-for-profit, and they're both DC-based trade organizations, nothing more than that. Achieve Inc. primarily wrote the standards. They're responsible for the Common Core State Standards. It's another not-for-profit education company that assists in writing educational programs. Bill and Melinda Gates, you're going to hear their name a lot throughout this process. They have put a ton of money into this project. They gave Achieve Inc. $100 million to write the Common Core State Standards. Now, there were only 5 lead writers for Common Core State Standards for 74 million children in this country. 5 people wrote them, just 5. They are David Coleman, get used to that name because he worked for Achieve, and he's now the president of the College Board. You have to ask yourself, why is he president of the College Board now? Because he's going to align the SATs and ACTs to Common Core State Standards. Then you have Jason Zimba, both of whom have no experience writing standards whatsoever, or any real-time classroom experience as well. Sue Pimentel, William McCallum, and Phil Darrow. The standards are copyrighted, which means you cannot change them whatsoever. So our teachers, the school board, the hands are tied. You cannot change, you can't deviate from them whatsoever. They're copyrighted. You hear a lot, you probably heard a lot that they were internationally benchmarked. A couple of months ago in the springtime, they're internationally benchmarked. Well, they've never been internationally benchmarked, actually. There's no proof that they were ever internationally benchmarked. And corestandards.org was forced to remove it from their website. And now it states they're relevant to the world. So there's 5 main points concerning Common Core state standards. You have the data mining, which is a real concern for parents. You have your rights as a parent. They're being stripped. Parents had no input to these standards whatsoever, nothing. The loss of local control is extremely important here. Education should come at a local and state level. It should not go any further. The federal government should not have their hands in our children's education, nothing whatsoever. Your local school taxes that you're paying for are being used for an untested and unproven with an unknown price tag. We have no idea how much this is going to cost our schools. And your child's future. Your child's future are determined by these bubble tests that they take. So they're going to put them on a track somewhere, according to their standardized testing. Okay, so this is the P20 coordination. This is a slide. Let me see mine. So this is a slide from the New York State Race to the Top selection criteria and competition priorities. On page 247, you can find it on the website. It's a government document. Over here, P20. Does anyone know what P20 is? Okay, we got one person. Okay, P20 is preschool through 20 years old. That is how long they want to track your child. That's how long they want to track your child, from preschool to 20 years old. It actually has been confirmed in some states out west in Oregon that it's actually prenatal. Okay, prenatal through 20 years old. There is a YouTube video, Deputy Superintendent Rob Saxton from Oregon. Look it up. All your kids belong to us. So there you'll see the P20 will follow individuals from birth through adulthood. So what kind of information are they harvesting from us? Common Core is using your children for their information, but not only your children, they're using your family's information as well. So it's a family intrusion. They're using religious affiliation, voting status, dwelling ownership, whether you own or rent a house, your health care plan, your bus stops, arrival and pickup times. Why is this relevant to our children's education? A couple of months ago, I went to a National Stop Common Core meeting in Dallas, and we were talking about the data points that they're collecting on the children. Does anyone know how many data points it takes to pinpoint a child's identity? Just a gander. New York State is the worst state when it comes to student privacy, the worst in the union. New York State wants to collect over 416 data points. It takes only 7 data points, just 7, to pinpoint a child's identity. That's a big issue. Richard Innes from Bluegrass Institute, who I spoke with, confirmed that with me a couple months ago. So how are we harvesting this information? In Bloom. You're going to hear a lot of in Bloom next couple of months, especially with the data dashboards that have been mandated through NICED. What is in Bloom? In Bloom is a not-for-profit organization, again, a joint project funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And again, they gave more money, $100 million, as well as the Carnegie Corporation of New York to harvest your child's information without your consent. Amplify Education is a division of the Rupert Murdoch Corporation. He supplied the infrastructure for In Bloom. So a couple of months ago, we had several states that committed to using In Bloom. We had Delaware, Georgia, Illinois, several different states. There was a huge parent pushback recently in the spring, and a lot of the states said, no, we're going to cancel our contract. Our children are more important. Just recently, Jefferson County in Colorado, there was a pilot county for In Bloom. Just this week, I believe, or last week it was, they canceled their contract with In Bloom. So now it only leaves 2 states, New York and Illinois. So, while In Bloom is busy harvesting your child's information and your family's personal information, they decided to incorporate a CYA policy for them, resolving them of all liability if personal information is breached. So, who here checks your child's identity if it's ever been stolen? It doesn't really come up in your mind, really, does it? Well, student identity can be a big issue within Bloom. Data breaches have already happened. Look at Sachem. There's been a data breach in Kentucky with their database. So it can happen, and it usually happens actually inside the company. My husband is in IT, and he tells me these breaches actually happen within the company, the personnel. Just recently, but there is some things you can do. Just recently, this past week, a bunch of several parents got together and put together a lawsuit against In Bloom, requesting a retaining order to stop collecting their information. It was filed by an attorney firm, Pitta and Giblin. They represent 12 New York City public school parents. So there is something that you can do as a parent. You can go together with a class lawsuit. I would highly suggest you go to classsizematters.org. There you will find a lot of information about what's happening right now with this particular case. The groundwork has already been laid out, so all you need to do is find an attorney. They can actually just look at the groundwork that's been laid out and go and get a class lawsuit if you would like to go that route. So here's a slide from an actual page from our government. It is from the Department of Education, and its report named Promoting Grit, Tenacity, and Perseverance, Critical Factors for Success in the 21st Century. So here's a facial expression camera, a posture analysis seat, a pressure mouse, and a wireless skin conductor. These are all ideas that should concern every parent. Just the mere fact it is on our government website should trouble everyone, that they're even thinking of using this for our children. This past Memorial Day weekend in May, Polk County, Florida, there were eye scans done without parental consent. From K through 5th, I believe it was. And the permission slips, they said, were sent home. They were never sent home. And they took eye scans of all the children. So we're going to ask, how can this happen? How can our children's information be used? We're supposed to be protected by the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974, FERPA, which affords your family privacy will not be sold to third parties. Well, it was gutted, meaning they picked it apart, gutted it in 2011, December 2011. The reason why they did this is because it would be against the law. They would not be able to get your children's information if they did not gut FERPA. They're essentially building a national de facto database on children nationwide. It became law in January 2012 without any congressional oversight whatsoever. It was done executive order. So schools do not need parental consent to share student records with any school official who has a legitimate educational concern. The United States Department of Education defines School official to include private companies, third parties, hired by the school, as long as the data is only used for what the contract deems. How do we know what the contract deems? We don't. We don't know where the information is being sold to what parties. Your child's going to be used for various information and your family's information, and it's intrusive. It's very intrusive. So before FERPA was gutted, our children from 0 to 6 were protected. They're not protected anymore. They're free game. You see the old FERPA regulations and the new. So our parental rights are being diminished by Common Core. There are uncountable outsiders who are controlling the education in this country. You have Achieve, you have the National Governors Association, you have CCSSO, you have Pearson, which has a monopoly in education. Common Core state standards are copyrighted, which means that our teachers no longer have the creativity they once had in the classroom under Common Core state standards. Our teachers' ability has been decimated to teach. They can't teach anymore. Our teachers have been virtually handcuffed, pushed unwillingly into the solitary confinement by this national centralized education mandate. Our school districts, our board members, their roles and responsibilities in helping assist our children's education has been reduced dramatically, completely. Everything is mandated. Your rights as a parent are being diminished. So right now, if you have a question with the curriculum, where do we go? What do we do? In a New York Times article published on June 8, 2013, Who's Minding the Schools by Andrew Hacker and Claudia Dreyfus, for all its impact, the Common Core is essentially an invisible empire. It doesn't have a public office. It doesn't have a board of directors or a salaried staff. Its website lists neither a postal address nor a telephone number. It's invisible. No accountability. Zero. So let's get to the real cost of Common Core state standards. As you know, New York we won in phase 2, $700 million. Another $150 million for teacher quality assurance programs and more data mining, to a total of $850 million. Currently, there's been no official cost analysis done by Governor Cuomo. Common Core state standards was voted in, by Governor Paterson. He signed the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, in 2010. But Governor Cuomo had the power to stop it, and he didn't stop it. He's been in office for a couple of years now. We still don't have a cost analysis. We don't know what this is going to cost us. There's only one document that is done by Henry W. Burke in conjunction with Pioneer Institute. And this is a conservative estimate of the cost for Common Core state standards is $1.1 billion. So, leaving a gap of $250 million. Who is going to pay for that? We are. Taxpayers. Homeowners. Why has Governor Cuomo not prepared an official cost analysis? Why? I think that's a legitimate question. After it's been implemented, so what's the real cost? How long will we have until we have to pay for Common Core state standards? The East Quogue School District didn't receive any money for Race to the Top. In Race to the Top grantee can be found on our website under the library section. It's another official document. All unused funds will revert back to the U.S. Department of Treasury in 2015, September 2015. So according to the Race to the Top district allocations, I looked up again East Quogue did not receive any money whatsoever. So you have to think about the parents who send their children here and all the taxpayers. Have you thought about the cost of the infrastructure, to manage Common Core state standards? All the tests are targeted to be online starting next year, 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. You have IT personnel to support the support contracts. How they would be paid for? A computer per student, a tablet per student? Those are just some of the questions to ask the school board. Can only surmise that after 2015, your school taxes will go up exponentially. My school taxes this past year went up $1,000. And again, our school taxes are going to go up for an unfunded and unproven mandate that has no proof that it's going to work whatsoever. The loss of local control. Because these assessments are now done on a national level, we've lost local control. We don't have local control anymore. The park assessments drive the tests, which dictate the curriculum. Again, park creates the assessments, which are aligned to the Common Core state standards, which drive the curriculum. As long as you have park, you will have Common Core state standards. It does not matter that NICE said change the name to Common Core Learning Standards. It's still Common Core state standards. It's all smoke and mirrors, different packaging, same outcome, control. Again, the standards are copyrighted by the NGA and CCSSO. It's a major issue for teachers and school administrators. Cannot change the standards whatsoever. However, don't fret because your teachers and the school districts are giving a whopping 15%. There's a clause in there that you can incorporate a 15% change within the curriculum. So the teacher has the freedom to incorporate what he or she would like in the classroom, but only 15%. But don't think that 15% is going to be on the assessments, because it won't. So 15% is not much for a taxpayer, is it? To have a say in education. You're talking about education without representation. This is what Common Core state standards is right now. It's education without representation. Our teachers are reduced to educational facilitators. They're giving modulars and scripts. Not every school district. My school district where I go to, I know they use the scripts by the minute, by the second, by the day. One of my best friends' daughter, her daughter has a math book, and it's Engage New York. Just a simple white little textbook, Engage New York. The teachers are literally regurgitating these plan lessons. They're planned for them. They've completely lost their creativity. We have teachers who have gone to school, gone to get certified, gone for their masters, and they can't teach anymore. Teacher frustration is at an all-time high, and the angst is at an all-time high. School boards also have no say in their local school districts anymore. The testing and the assessments that we had this past spring, a lot of controversy with those. So why all the secrecy? Why can't we see the tests? No one can see the tests. The teachers don't even see the tests. If you want to see the test, you need to fill out a FOIA. A Freedom of Information Act. You actually need to fill this out if you want to see your child's test. Then you go into the room. You cannot take a picture. I don't even think you can take notes. You can look at it. Someone is with you at all times. And that is how you review your child's test. There's been some families here in Long Island that actually were refused. They were denied. Teachers, again, are not allowed to review these assessments. They're under lock and key. The assessments are kept under lock and key by the principal. He physically has to count them, distribute them out himself, and when they're done with the testing, he needs to recount them and put under lock and key. No one knows what are in these tests. If they're so great, why the secrecy? And as Cindy had mentioned, the assessments are tied to our teachers' APPR, the Annual Personal Performance Review, which pressure for our teachers to teach to the test. Our children are not a commodity. They're not human capital. That is how Bill Gates describes our children, as human capital. Our children should not be bought and sold in the open market for the highest bidder. Those who make money off of Common Core do not have the ownership or the minds of our children. These field tests your children take, they don't affect their grades. They don't need to take them. Your children are being used. This past spring, you had children in New York City who were forced to take these tests, and they were not properly reviewed. The material was not reviewed whatsoever. There was inadequate training for the teachers, and they failed miserably. The bottom line, our children's future are more than what the standardized tests indicate. There's more ways to gauge your child than just using a bubble test. When we have a question with our child's ability or strengths or weaknesses, where do we go to? We go to our teachers, because our teachers are with our children 5 days a week, several hours a day. They're the second best person who knows our child. This education model, I don't know if any of you are aware, but this education model was imported through in Europe. This education model came by Europe. Sir Michael Barber. You may want to look him up. Pearson, a British company. He wrote a book, Deliverology, calling out to all the education reformers in the United States to change the education drastically. And boy, sure did we change it drastically. I always use my husband as an example because he was born and raised in Europe. He went through the same education model that is currently being implemented here. Only difference is when he was a child in school, you had to pick what path you were going by 8th grade. Here they want to do it earlier, 5th grade. What child knows, your child changes my daughter wants to be a jewelry designer, and then she wants to be a veterinarian, then my son wants to be a race car driver, then he wants to be a fireman. It changes. Children should have these dreams to dream what they want to be, not according to what their tests say. This education model, Common Core State Standards, is grooming our children. Okay? It's grooming our children for a future workforce according to the corporate needs. That is what is going on. They're producing good little workers. You have gifted children, you have special needs children. This is especially, this gets me every time. Our special needs children, now I'm sure IEP, we know what IEP is. It's an individual education program. Depending upon the child's challenges, it could be anywhere from 5 pages to 10 pages to 20 pages. Our special needs children have been literally thrown off the bus. Thrown off. Common Core, CoreStandards.org, their special needs, their students with disabilities. The tailored program is less than 2 pages. Less than 2 pages. Its application to students with disabilities is less than 2 pages for the children who were IEPs. Not every child wears a size 6. Children learn at different stages. I always explain how children are like flowers. Some flowers need direct sunlight, some flowers need shade, some flowers need more watering than others, and that is our children. Our children are all different shapes and sizes. Some are visual learners, some learn in so many different ways, and our children should not be put into this collective group. And that's what's happening with Common Core State Standards. Oops, sorry. So, Common Core State Standards was developed by educrats who found an untapped resource, education, to make money. Where's the money? Excuse me. If you look at the work groups who were there for the Common Core State Standards, I'm on the wrong page. I'm good. Sorry about that. You have Achieve, ACT, America's Choice, Student Achievement Partners, all educrats in these work groups. We're the master teachers. We're the K-12 teachers, our principals, our superintendents, and our parents. We were all left out of the process. Everyone was left out of the process. Dr. Milgram was the only mathematician on the validation committee, the only mathematician. Now, he sent me an email a couple of months ago because I didn't understand. I was going through the work groups and I saw mathematician. And I said, well, Dr. Milgram, I said, can you explain to me why it says mathematician when I heard that you were the only mathematician? He sent me this long email. I didn't understand it because this man is so brilliant. He's a NASA scientist. He's a world-renowned mathematician. He refused to sign off on the standards. Dr. Milgram of Stanford University called the standards mediocre. In fact, he refused to sign off on the standards because doing so would have required him to assert that they were reflected international expectations for math. But they were considerably below that. Dr. Slime-Stotsky is another very well-known English professor. She goes around from state to state to state. She was just in Wisconsin testifying against Common Core State Standards. She also refused to sign off on the standards, saying they were mediocre. You can still ask today, where's the evidence? Where's the empirical proof that these are going to work? Even Bill Gates, recently, again, Bill Gates, indicated recently, just this past, in September, Washington Times, Valerie Strauss, we don't know if it will work. That's his answer. We don't know if it will work. Really? So why don't we use his children for this experiment as well, if we don't know if they're going to work? Our children are not test subjects and should not be treated like rats in the lab. Common Core Standards was done in the cover of the night, and it has been in your schools now going on 2 years. There was a third rollout. My school's been doing it for almost 2 years now. How many of you have really, truly been informed about what Common Core State Standards is? I hope you go and inform yourself. Good ideas do not involve force, do not involve cohesion, and are done in the open, not under the radar. To quote America's superintendent, which Cindy did so well, Dr. Rella, stop it, fix it, or scrap it. So how can you get involved? There's so many things that you can do as a parent. First, you can join our Facebook group page, Stop Common Core in New York State, spelled out. We post daily events. We have so many events up there. You can write your legislators. You can tweet Governor Cuomo. I right now have a campaign to tweet Governor Cuomo. So every morning I say, good morning, Governor Cuomo, and put my little tweet in. We have a website, stopcommoncorenewyorkstate.com. There is a 5-part video series. Excuse me? Oh. Excuse me, sorry, I'm being corrected. There's a 5-part video series by Jane Robbins by the American Principles Project. It's less than 30 minutes. I suggest you watch it. It's a wealth of information. I still watch it to this day. It gives you a well-rounded background of Common Core State Standards. We have a petition that Assemblyman Graff from District 5, 807994. It's a very simple bill. I'm sure Assemblyman Thiel is going to be signing it shortly, correct? Awesome. We have about 26 co-signers. We need more. We have the petition to support that. We now are going on to 17,000 signatures. Here's a little tidbit for the petition. For every signature we receive, a friendly little email goes to Governor Cuomo. So everyone in this room, if you haven't signed it, we would love for you to sign it. It's fixnewyorkschools.com, and it's to support the bill A07994. So get 5 of your friends, 5 of your family, 10 signatures. You mobilize together. Our website, when we started, we only had 3 counties. We broke up New York State counties. We now have 61 counties. There are 62 counties in New York State. Each county does its own mobilization, and they go and they mobilize. I drove up to Wyndham, New York last night to do a presentation with Gail DeBonis Richmond and Tim Farley. So you have these parents like Cindy who are going around doing these parent-led forums and mobilizing together. And it can be done. You can write your legislators to support Bill A7994. Also, we need a companion bill. So you may want to write to Senator Laval, see if he's going to do a companion bill to A07994. And my ending is a poem I wrote. When I found out, I was up literally for a month, 6 weeks, crying, reading, watching videos, trying to absorb as much as information as possible because it's overwhelming for a mother. And I think it's overwhelming for a mother because it's her instincts. Her instincts are kicking in. So I wrote this poem at 1 o'clock in the morning, feeling very desperate and isolated. A mother's cry. My children, my own flesh and blood, these beautiful little souls that I carried for 9 months with nothing but unconditional love from the time the stick read positive are being ripped out of my loving and protective hands virtually and kidnapped by the government for their future use. I will not and cannot let that happen, and will fight with every moral fiber of my soul that God has bestowed upon me. You actually feel your children are being kidnapped from you. You really do. And the dads out here need to support the mothers, because the mothers are going to go through this process. And the process, the only way I can describe the process is kind of like a mourning process for your children. It's a macabre way of describing it, but you go through this crying phase, you go through the anger, and then you start to read and you start to learn, and then you feel empowered. And that's when you go to the woman in the grocery store, hey, do you know about Common Core State Standards? And you give them a card, you give them a flyer, you just start a conversation out of the blue, because you feel empowered, you feel confident, and you want to go and inform your friends, your neighbors, anyone that will listen. Because our children, this is our children. We need to protect them. Our education needs to stay at the local and state level. It cannot go any further. The most important thing you can do is inform yourself, learn. Our website, one of our mottos is inform, equip, and empower. And that's what we hope that we are doing as a state. Again, we have 61 counties. Every state is active. Some counties are a little bit, maybe 4 or 5 members, but all it needs is 4 or 5 members. Steuben County, all the way out west, they have probably had 5 core members. They were going all around doing parent-led forums and presentations. So the best thing you can do is get involved, inform yourself, and read and learn and feel comfortable with the facts, and just go out and talk and mobilize, hand out flyers, tweet, write letters, anything you can to get it done. Talk to your teachers, talk to your principal, talk to your legislators. We need to change this. It's going to be changed, and it has to be changed in the legislative process. That's how we're going to get rid of it. Thank you very much.
Mary Calamia is a licensed clinical social worker and a psychotherapist. She works with students, parents, and teachers representing more than 20 different school districts and deals with the psychological effects of all this every day. Please welcome Mary.
Good evening. One minor adjustment. It's Mary Calamia. It's okay. We met on Facebook, so it's all in words and writing. I'm going to talk to you about your most precious commodity, your children. I'm not going to tell you that data mining is evil and threatens their privacy. It does, but that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. I do live in Sachem, by the way, where our data was dumped for all the world to see. Those of you who don't know, anybody who applied for free or reduced lunch, their financial information was released on a website, and the children's medical information, vaccination records, for like, I don't remember, it was 3 or 4 or 5 years worth of records. So imagine if they have 413 pieces of data, 416, I'm sorry. And I'm not going to talk to you about what it means when the federal government steps into local education. It's unconstitutional. But again, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. Or the ethics of corporations making big money on the backs of your children. Okay, I'm not here to talk about that. Let's talk about your children. Last summer, well, 2 summers ago now, I started having, I see a lot of teachers. Now, that's not to say that teachers have a lot more mental issues than anybody else, okay? I'm a referral source for the BOCES EAP. So I happen to see a lot of teachers because they just call me, Mary, can you see a teacher, okay? Teachers started coming in over the summer, talking about having to learn 2 new curricula, the math and the ELA curriculum. My primary school teachers were beside themselves with all the workload over the summer that they had to learn these 2 new curricula. And you know, I don't work in the schools. I'm like, all right, so look, I gotta learn when somebody comes in with a new disorder, I have to learn about it. You know, what's the big deal? So I really didn't think anything about it. And then come September, I also see a lot of children, and my kids were coming in and they were saying, I just took a test today. I just took my final exam, you know. I took my Spanish test today. I haven't even started Spanish yet. I kind of scratched my head and I'm like, all right, what's up? And the kids were getting a little agitated about it, but all right, you know, I'm a therapist, I can handle this. And then October hit. Now, I don't keep numbers. I'm a 1-girl office. I do everything soup to nuts. So I don't keep numbers or statistics, and if anybody's going to ask me for my research, I'm going to tell you I ain't got any. The phone rings, I get a client referral. Sometimes I might get 2 or 3 in a week. Sometimes I get none. Sometimes, you know, the phone rings more often than not. But last October, my phone was ringing non-stop. I was getting 5, 6 referrals in a day, students. There was one day I clocked 12 new referrals, one day. Actually, it was like 14 because there was a mother saying, can you take all 3 of my children? Back to back to back. Again, I'm a solo practitioner, so I can't take them all. I had to refuse a lot of people because I just didn't have room for them. So I don't know how many of the kids I didn't see were academic-related issues. But all of my kids were coming in saying the same thing. I can't handle it. It's too much. I can't do the work. I don't want to go to school anymore. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. The majority of the referrals I was getting were 8th graders, honor students. Now, I service about 20 different districts, so this isn't an isolated, hey, this was going on in one middle school or one junior high. Self-mutilation. Cutting themselves with sharp objects and burning themselves with cigarettes. Now, this isn't a new phenomenon. We have kids that self-mutilation is a problem. But 5 to 6 calls a day. And every one of them was coming in and saying the same thing. They weren't talking about their parents or their boyfriend or anything other than, I can't take the pressure, it's too much. Now, I had also closed my practice several years earlier to anyone under the age of 12, with a few notable exceptions. Because I don't do play therapy. I don't have a room to do play therapy anymore. I used to have a big table in a big conference room, and then I moved to another office. So I closed my practice to younger children because you have to do play therapy with them because they couldn't sit through a 45-minute therapy session. All of a sudden, I'm getting 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 3rd and 4th graders calling and calling. I got intrigued. I started taking them because I was just curious. And I'd say to the moms, you know, I don't take 8-year-olds because they don't do play therapy here. And every one of them would say the same thing. Oh, they can sit through a 45-minute session. What 8-year-old can sit through a 45-minute session and have this adult-to-adult conversation? All of a sudden, I get these little sad, I call them my 40-year-old midgets, coming into the office, these little sad-faced kids sitting on my couch. I hate school. I can't do it. I can't take it. In the process, incidentally, my teachers were showing similar signs. Mommy, I don't want to go to work. You know, what Cindy said, please, 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 do not take this out on your teachers. They are suffering just like the children. The standards. The standards are about teaching more about less. They want children to think critically. They want them to use abstract thought and persuasion. Well, let me give you just a little bit of developmental psychology. Okay? There's a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. That is where critical thinking comes from. Critical thinking, abstract thought, prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until we are about the age of 24. So, we're asking an 8-year-old to think critically. How many of you have the following 2 things in your house? A child and a garbage pail. What happens when that pail is full? Does your child look at the pail and say, it's full? I better take it out? Or do they walk right past it? How many of you moms are like, holy cow, how many times do I have to tell them the pail is full? Take it out, right? They don't get it, right? Because that's a 3-part process. They have to say, the pail is full, it needs to be emptied, I should do it. Now, they don't do it because they're not capable of that kind of thought. Sorry, moms, it ain't going to change. Okay? Now, if it's your husband, that's a whole nother story. All right, I don't want to beat up on the guys. But the fact is, they're just not capable. And that what Common Core standards are asking them to do is to say the pail is full, it needs to be emptied, I should be the one to do it. They're not capable of doing it. So they're freaking out. And I'm sure you've all seen the homework meltdowns. I know I have. I say it's like the equivalent of asking a fish to fly. And what happens to my little fishes is they're ashamed of their gills. And they blame themselves for not having wings. And that's what I'm seeing in my office right now. The Common Core standards, one of the reasons that they did this, so they say, is because we want our children to be globally competitive. They're not learning as well as kids in other parts of the world. Well, let's talk about China for a second. Google, anytime you want, Chinese elementary school children suicide, and see how many hits come up. 2 years ago, 3 elementary school children, they failed to finish their homework. 3 little girls, 10 and 11-ish. They didn't finish their homework, so they went home and they cut school the next day to try and finish their homework because they didn't want to get in trouble. And they didn't finish their homework that day either. So they joined hands and jumped off a building together. Fortunately, they survived. And one little girl was interviewed. She said, if I'm dead, I won't have to do homework anymore. There were 2 boys this year in China who successfully committed suicide over unfinished homework. So if you want to be globally competitive, I don't think so. If your kids are doing okay, great. You know, that's wonderful, but ask yourself what happens when they roll out science or social studies, or it goes back, you know, to prenatal, or it goes up to they decide it's not P to 20 is not 20 years old, but it's 20th grade, and now there's Common Core in medical school. It's, you know, I had a kid who was doing perfectly fine, was seeing me for other reasons, fabulous, 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 just hit the skids, got like a 40 on a math test. Now all of a sudden not so fine. So just ask yourself, you know, are they going to be okay tomorrow? If they are okay and they stay okay, refer back to the data mining and the unconstitutionality and everything else I talked about before. I want to make something really, really, really clear. We have to separate two issues because there's a lot of talk about the testing and the Common Core. And I want to make it very, very clear. Testing is a problem. Oh God, last year when the tests were rolling around, I didn't want to go to work. I mean, it was just crazy. My phone was ringing, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 8 o'clock at night. And my nephew, my godson's wedding, you know, and my cell phone is ringing. You know, what's the answer to number 3? So testing is a problem, but it is not the problem. The Common Core is the problem. I need to make that abundantly clear because I strongly believe that what could come out of Albany, forgive me, Assemblyman, is that they might reduce the testing. They might even tweak APPR and not touch the Common Core. And we can't afford to fall for that. Okay, so again, testing is not the problem. The Common Core is the problem. If you want to get involved, Yvonne gave you some excellent suggestions. Most definitely, if there's going to be only 2 things you do, sign that petition, www.fixnyschools.com. Because every day, it's just like every time a bell rings, an angel gets their wings. Okay, and I get my little tweets out to the governor in the morning too. Hi, it's me again. But the other thing is, you have the option to refuse the tests. You can tell your teachers, your superintendent, your principal, my child is not going to take the tests. My understanding is that in this district, that's an easy thing to do, that you're not going to have any problem. The tests do not do anything for your child's academic scores. There is no consequence. But what happens is these lovely little data collecting, data mining, evil people out there get no data on your child. Plus, I think it's just a wonderful way to send a message to, so if you're ever going to just do any 2 things, we're tired. If you want to do more, please. You know, I get up in the morning, I answer emails, Facebook messages, I talk to Yvonne 106 times, I go to work, I go to meetings. Occasionally I sleep. There are some districts that actually are hoping you opt out. So, and there are refusal letters, there are sample refusal letters on Yvonne's website. So one of my kids, I have to throw this little anecdote in, because one of my kids, we were talking about math. What else? I'm in therapy, we're talking about math. I'm teaching kids how to divide in therapy, okay? But one of my kids was we were talking about the math tests, and something came up, and he says to me, oh, no, we don't do it that way, we estimate. We don't see the actual number, we estimate. And I'm thinking, you know, if I have to have surgery, do I want my anesthesiologist estimating? Just saying, okay? So just think long and hard about that. Little quote, Frederick Douglass. It is easier to build a strong child than to fix a broken man. I'm fixing broken children right now. And if it's hard to fix a broken man, imagine how hard it is to fix a broken child. So anyway, King John is coming here to these parts, so I hear. He is not coming to my Senate district, unfortunately, and that is, what that means is I do not get a turn at the podium with King John. Yes, I'm being rude. I worked very hard on a statement for him. I am the only person testifying in New York State on mental health. Oh, let me just give you a little note on that, okay? Because I like to be a wise guy. I went to the Senate hearing. Senator Flanagan was holding Senate hearings on the Common Core. I went to the first hearing in Brentwood and said, why doesn't he have anybody speaking from the mental health profession? So I called Senator Flanagan and said, why? And his office told me, well, we didn't think it was relevant. Okay? So several months hence, another senator, at the urging of somebody, contacted Senator Flanagan and said, we want this woman testifying at the next hearing. Crickets. No phone call. Okay? So now, King John, is going to be here on Tuesday. I took the day off because I wanted to have a word or two with him. And I've been told, no, you're not in the Senate district. Unfortunately, we can't allow you to speak. Okay? Now, again, he's not in my Senate district, so I don't get to speak. I've had 2 other senators call Senator Laval to no avail. So I'm going to read you my statement to John King because I feel like I worked really long and hard on it, so indulge me. So, my name is Mary Calavia, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I want to thank you for bringing us the Common Core. Business has never been better. If not for the Common Core, I would never have met the 8-year-old who is so afraid of the spring exams she has to be medicated just to go to school. Or the 4th grader who vomits every morning, certain that he is the stupidest kid in the class. Or the lady who has to leave work early, her job in jeopardy, because her 7th grader becomes so hysterical over his homework, she fears for his safety. Or the 6-year-old boy who is scratching the skin off of his face, drawing blood every time he does his homework. Or the 8-year-old who picks his skin obsessively and has to go to school with Band-Aids all over his face. Or the honor student who carved the word stupid into her wrist when she received last year's math assessment scores. Without the Common Core, I would not be working 10 to 12-hour days without a break, just to treat all of the young people streaming into my practice with anxiety, depression, self-mutilation, panic attacks, insomnia, school refusal, and a host of other problems. I thank you for the emergency phone calls at all hours of the night and the countless interrupted meals, leisure activities, and family occasions when I've had to address a homework meltdown that could not be resolved without professional intervention. How many more children will you send my way? How far do you plan to go with this disaster that you call education but more closely resembles child endangerment? How desperate are you to be right? What will it take for you to do the right thing? Thank you.
But before we do that, I just want to address, I'm pretty sure a lot of questions are going to be about refusing the state tests. So before everyone comes up and just starts asking that question, yes, you can refuse the state test. Every district has a different policy. Some districts will allow your children to go somewhere quietly and read. Some districts have a sit and stare policy where they will make your child sit for the entire length of the test and stare at the room. So you really need to follow up with your district and find out what their policy is about refusing the test, because every district is different. I've heard that you can refuse, and before I went ahead and did it for my children, not only did I speak to the administration in my school, I actually went to the school that my children are going into after they leave this school and found out to make sure that they wouldn't miss out on any opportunities or be held accountable for not taking these state assessments. Your teachers don't see these state assessments. Your kids are out of their classrooms and they're on summer break when the scores finally roll out. Many of you maybe just got your kids' test results back, and the vague explanation as to why your kid got the score that they got is pretty much the same thing their teachers get. So for me, it was an easy choice to refuse these tests because it does nothing for my kids, so why would I make them sit through all of this? But it really is something that you, I think, as a parent, need to find out for yourself with your district, because it's also up to you. If your district does have a sit and stare policy, would you rather let your kid just sit and take the test or stare at a wall for 90 minutes? For me, I mean, it was, like I said, it was a no-brainer I'm sure for parents with kids with special needs to sit them through the torture of, they take the same test, they just sit longer than everybody else. So you really should check with your district on their refusal policy. Some districts will let you speak to the administration and opt out for you or refuse for your children. Other districts will make your child tell the teacher, I refuse to take this test. So it really is important that you have a conversation too with your child, because some children are like, you know what, I'm doing all the work for it, I may as well take the test anyway. For me, they're not doing it. But it's a personal parental decision, and you really should check with your district and their policies before you make that decision for your children. Because like I said, I wanted to make absolutely sure that I wasn't doing anything to deprive my children of any opportunities before I made the decision. So that's a personal choice, and it's something you need to check with your district on. Thank you. And if you have a question, we're going to come up here, and then you can come up to the podium and ask a question.
Hi. John Kernel from Rensenburg. Do you guys have a copy or an interface of what the actual questions are going to be for the data mining? Such as they say they're going to ask their religion, their blood type, social security number.
If you go on the NCES, nces.ed.gov is the National Education Data Model. There you will find the data points that they're going to be using.
Okay, and this is something that children actually have to fill out?
No, this is just information that's going to be put in the data dashboards
Okay.
by the school district that will go up to Bloom.
Okay, and how are they going to get it? Like, how are they going to know whether or not somebody owns a firearm in their house or what the school drop-off place is? What I'm saying is there an interface or something?
I can't tell you that right now. I don't know. It's not from any one specific document. It's coming from everything that the children are putting into the schools. Yeah, even like emergency contact information, exactly. So it's there are actual, I've seen some actual documents where the children are given an assignment. Ask your parents what their political affiliation is, who did your grandparents vote for?
And so how is this interface into
The schools
data?
upload it. The schools input it.
Okay, so in other words, my child would come home and say, Daddy, what's your political party on the homework assignment? And then that's going to go into some type of a database?
Depending on your district, yes, absolutely. I suggest that you tell them that you're a Whig or some defunct party, just saying.
Andrew Jackson. This is actually a question I was wondering maybe some teacher might be able to say. What exactly specifically are the teachers teaching now as opposed to what they might be teaching? Well, I know last year we adopted the standards in the state, but 2 years ago. I mean, how is it really different?
Any teachers in here who would like to answer? No teachers.
Okay, no, that's fine. Someone else can.
Next year they will.
All right, now another question. 48 states opted out of the In-Bloom database. So how are they using, or how are they getting their information up to their state departments of education? What information database are they using? Because they have to get it up there somehow.
Not every state uses In-Bloom. So In-Bloom is specifically to the 9 states that they had, only 2 are left. But if you look at every state and just Google the state longitudinal database and then the state, you'll probably find which company they're using. They all have different companies they use.
Right.
You can find the grant money that was given to them. Because normally they'll say, well, our school district didn't get any money for it. The school district doesn't have a contract, for instance, with In-Bloom. NICET has the contract with In-Bloom. So every state educational department has the contract with a specific vendor. And you normally can find immediately who it is and how much money was set aside for it.
Okay, so they're all using different vendors to upload or forward the information. Okay.
So to save costs, they might say, okay, 9 go with the same company.
Okay. Do you guys have the specific clauses, or can we find the specific clauses of how FERPA was changed?
Yes. If you go on our website, It's in the library section, I believe. Don't
I'm
quote
sorry,
me.
what was the website again?
It's .commoncore in NewYork.com.
Okay.
I gave the wrong website out earlier, sorry. In the library section, I believe, my memory serves me right, we have the actual FERPA that was revised, and it'll say December 2011. It's a long
Is there a
document.
red line on it, sort of, or, I mean, like, you have a specific...
It's the official document from the United States government on
Okay.
the website. And it's very long, it's very legalese.
I'm good at that.
The data dashboard that you manage,
Yes.
that you mentioned, they are, paying for this, to give this to the gift districts. They're paying for it for 2 years. Then we pick up the price tag for it. So it's not a gift, it's something that they're making us put into use, and then they're taking the money away from it. So it's something that if we take it, we're gonna be stuck paying for it after 2 years.
Okay. That's all I have, unless the teacher wants to come up and answer. No, that is a question, like, what are they teaching now, as opposed to what they would have been teaching, 2 years ago? That's really something that I'd like to know.
All I can tell you is, from looking at my third grader's homework from when my sixth grader was in third grader, it's changed a lot. I mean, my third grader is now doing spelling words that my sixth grader was doing, and like I said, they've now put a lot of nonfiction stuff into it, and she can't even read half the words, but she needs to pick out parts of speech for it. My sixth grader was saying, "Mom, we never did this." It's more advanced, but it's more advanced for these kids, and the hard time that I'm having with it is, you took a kid who was doing well, and now you're changing the whole game, and you're dropping them in on this, and they didn't have the backstory to all this.
Right, it's getting a job to do without the tools.
It's like before this all went into effect, say you did money in second grade. And my daughter was in first grade and they were doing money in second grade. Well, now they're doing money in second grade, but now she's in third grade, so she never learned money. But now she needs to know how to use money. So, what are we doing to our kids? I mean, we're asking them, she got asked to estimate the width of a door in meters. She hasn't learned the metric system. So how are we building them up and making them feel intelligent, like they're actually learning something, when we're asking them to know stuff that they weren't taught because they skipped it? So that's the best, as a mom, that's the best answer I can give you as to what I see as the difference.
Yeah, and also, in a lot of cases, and again, I guess it varies from district to district, I get to hear through my kids, they're not reading entire books, they're reading excerpts from literature, so that's a whopping change as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of the work that they're doing, they're asked to draw inferences, so I wonder if perhaps you read, chapters 1, 3, and 5 of the Iliad, do you infer what happened in 3, 6, and 9? I don't know, but.
Can I do a follow-up question?
I just want to make one
Go
point.
ahead.
If you go on our website, there's a tab, Extreme Education, and you'll see a difference of kindergarten from 1 year when there was no Common Core to the next year when it was implemented. Drastic difference, drastic. The kindergartner who didn't have Common Core had all this wonderful pictures with the crayons and coloring and no grades. 1 year difference, grades for kindergartners. Numbers, line plots. Our children going into kindergarten, they're starting to learn. They're just learning to, their social skills with one another. They're learning to read. They're learning how to hold a pencil. Some don't even know how to hold a pencil properly. And teaching these children at such a young age, it's just so age and kindergarten should be a refreshing, fun experience. That's where your foundation is built.
Just one other question. When you were able to isolate these problems of the teacher and your child, you don't have to answer this if you don't want it, but did you approach the teacher and say, look, this is a problem, how can we solve it? Were you given some type of
I
problem-solving
did, and
skills?
I have to say that at least in our school, there's a very open dialogue about what's going on, and I have said to her teacher, listen, it's not flying, because she came home, perfect example, it was take these definitions to these words and write them in your own words. she's 8. She said, what does that mean? I said, you have to write it like you would say it. What does that mean? So I told her, I said, you know what? Do it the way you want to do it. She basically wrote the word in a sentence because that's what it meant to her. And I told the teacher, and she said, you know, I'll try to explain it better to her, but if that's the way it clicks for her, she's fine with it. But there's difference, like we still have textbooks here. I can still go online to my kid's math textbook and look at what she learned and help her with it sometimes. But there's other districts I know that are doing worksheets, and there's no help for them. They don't have a textbook to go back to. They just have these worksheets that their kids are struggling with, and if you see the math the way it is now, I can't do 6th grade math if I didn't have a book to reference, because it's beyond what I was doing in algebra in high school. So, you know, I don't know, I mean, is this gonna make our kids great and wonderful? Maybe, but I don't see it, because all I see is kids struggling and feeling stupid. You know, you have to be able to grasp something and move forward to learn. If you're not doing that, and it's a whole process, you're not gonna learn, because you're gonna feel frustrated and left behind, and it's like I said, the special needs kids, there's nothing for it. I mean, they're at now the same standards as all of our kids. There's talk about getting rid of all there's a 2%, did you read about that? They have, the standards were changed for them. They're talking about, no, make them the same as everybody else. They'll make it. We're holding them back. So tell that to a parent with special needs that we're holding their kids back. It's the whole system is just, it's been ridiculous.
Any other questions? I just on the subject of special needs kids, because it's a valid issue. Think about a child with Asperger's, which is a mild, it's like the lowest stage on the spectrum of autism. They are very precise and they need everything orderly. And they don't trust well. They don't trust easily at all. Ask any parent with an Asperger's child. And these tests are deliberately, some of these questions are meant to be misleading, and they're feeling tricked. And they're being tested on material they haven't learned, and it's freaking them out. I mean, meltdowns like you cannot believe with the special needs kids.
Hi, my name is Ken Brosnan. I have a 9-year-old in the 4th grade here, and I also have a daughter who's a sophomore in college who went through East Quogue and West Hampton schools, and she's doing very beautifully in college, and she was an A student here when she was in school. What brought me out, I work very closely with my 9-year-old on her homework every day for about 2 to 3 hours. I handle the math and science, my wife handles the English and vocabulary, and we are often working from 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll take the break for dinner, and then we're going back to it until 8:30 in the evening so that she doesn't go into a sense of panic about the schoolwork. We did have the meltdowns and the crying a few weeks ago when school started up, and I found that I just have to spend the time with her. What brought me out, and I brought this question here today, because I just want to read the question. Keep in mind, this is something for a 9-year-old to understand, a 9-year-old. The after-school craft center has 15 boxes of 64 crayons in each. In 12 of the boxes, 28 of the crayons have not been used. All the rest of the crayons have been used. How many of the crayons in the center have been used? And I looked at them. And I said, wait a minute here. What's the question? And I looked at my little 9-year-old, and she's, a little bit of a hyper kid, and we went through it step by step, and when I was there with her doing the problem, we were able to do the problem. And I think that for the following day or the following couple of days, she's able to do the problem. But down the road, I'm talking about next week or in 2 weeks or a month, will she be able to even look at this again and have a fundamental understanding of what this problem is all about? I mean, frankly, when she's doing this problem, she's using the multiplication chart that we print out to do the simple multiplication like 6 times 7 and 3 times 8. So here we are, we're asking her to solve 3 or 4 steps to answer a question with large numbers. The answer, by the way, is 624. So we're talking about a 9-year-old girl being able to come up with this answer of 624, which is not even a number they can really fathom. They don't have anything that they have 624 of. Asking them to find out how many crayons in the center have been used after we talked about all the boxes of crayons, the 12 boxes of crayons where only some of the crayons were used, and then reverting back to how many crayons in the center have been used. So my concern is that we're just trying to shove this stuff down our kids' throat so that we can look competitive with kids in Finland or Sweden or wherever they are, and that we're robbing them of their ability to have that good self-esteem and to be able to truly develop a critical thought process. I remember when I was in high school, I took a college English course, and they taught us how to do critical thinking, how to write a structured essay. And that is really my first recollection of that phrase or that term, critical thinking. I took algebra in the 9th grade. My 4th grader has to figure out end problems. If Bill has 4 times as many frogs as Sam, and together they have 48 frogs, how many more frogs does Bill have than Sam? So, my concern is that what we need to do is to teach our children to learn the fundamentals at a pace that is commensurate with their ability to learn. That's what I really think.
My name is David Lerner. I'm from Sag Harbor. And, it's amazing. I can always recognize real evil by innocuous names like In Bloom. It sounds wonderful. Common Core sounds fundamentally right. It's just, the other day, I have a bunch of kids that we work with, and we were they're from the Tuckahoe School District. And one of the little girls who's from the Shinnecock Indian Reservation asked me a math question, because the kids always ask me questions. And so I said, give me the book and I'll take a look. And her math book, I don't know what this is about. It was in Spanish. And I said, what is this? You don't speak Spanish. She said, I know, but they put the textbook in Spanish. I must have left the English one at home. I'm like, whoa, why is anyone combining language and math in the same, so anyway, it just blew me away. But the data mining, I think, is the most upsetting thing of all. You can't really understand it because at the end of the day, I always say this about everything. Whenever you don't understand something, just follow the money trail, and then it'll make sense. But data mining, obviously, is a money trail. Now, here's my question. This is a big battle. I can see now. This,
David versus Goliath.
absolutely. And battles like this, they're hard to win. So my question is, because I didn't realize until the therapist spoke that we have real victims here. And this does sound like a class action lawsuit. And that's my question. Can this be, if we can get crowds like this together, can this be a class action lawsuit?
Yes, what I suggest, again, is going to classsizematters.org. Leonie Jameson, she is stellar when it comes to the data mining. She's worked with these 12 families from New York City. I would suggest contacting her because the groundwork has been laid out. This particular attorney, this firm, they're no longer accepting any more cases, so you would need to find a new attorney.
Okay.
But the groundwork has been laid out, and the seed is there, and it's been planted.
Okay, that's what I want.
Oh, yeah.
So it's called Class Size Matters.
Yes, it's classsizematters.org.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
asked the question. I'm not from this community. I live down here. I live in Stone Roaches. My daughter's teacher is over there. I teach 5th grade. So the differences in my classroom, the reading is much more focused on informational, which is great, but I watch in my guided reading groups, and book after book after book, they get tired of it. They don't, like someone said earlier, they're not reading those Newbery winners, those classics, those great novels that are also so important. Informational is important. Reading widely is what is important. And Common Core has us focusing on informational. That's one major shift. The math curriculum in 5th grade, I'm teaching things that kids were learning 2 years ago in 7th grade. One of the big things we do in 5th grade, and I know it starts from very little and moves up. Right now at the lower grades, they do, I think it's called number bonding. It lays the foundation for the distributive property. There is every single thing we teach in 5th grade, that distributive property keeps getting thrown in there. They don't even know the zero property. The distributive property, you know, for kids that have mathematical minds, they get it. The kids that don't, I teach in an inclusion setting, they just sit there frustrated. It totally breaks my heart. In terms of the testing, last year I had a student who probably had the most amazing mathematical mind that I've ever had the privilege to teach. And on one of those days, he broke down in tears, crying. I was dying contacting the mother. He knew the material. He got a 4 on that stupid test. That's irrelevant. He was beaten down. He's not the kind of kid who should have been beaten down. I have 23 incredible kids in my class right now. 7 of those 23 suffer from anxiety that significantly impacts their learning. 3 of those 7 are the top 3 students in my class. I have a child who during the summer does not stutter. During the school year, she has developed a stutter. I have seen the numbers of anxious students in my classroom grow significantly over the last 2 years. Another thing that I recently noticed, the kids, every time they take a test, they're freaking out. They get their test back. They're freaking out. They're hypersensitive. I can't believe, I'm like afraid to hand back tests, even if the grades aren't that bad. There was a science test we took recently, and I was sitting with a group of kids at my small group table, and I gave them their test back. Their scores were low. And I'm looking at the group of children, and as I'm looking at them, I'm realizing that these 3 children who are sitting with me don't have English spoken in the home. Nothing's being done for them. This doesn't address them. They've tested out of ESL. And their parents can't help them. We know, you know, that parents are an integral part of the education process. And it's so evident. I was looking at those 3 children. They are 3 very bright children. They are a perfect example of what happens when a parent is removed from the educational process. And right now, Common Core is removing us from that educational process. So we are going to have a society of children whose parents have been alienated from their education. How can they be successful?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Oh, the teachers are suffering too. Just to that end also, I left this out. I can't believe I left this out. But this Common Core, it is separating children from their parents. You're losing parental rights. And here's what, it's not just that you've been left out of the educational process. Who has to put the screaming kid on the bus? Who has to tell the screaming kid to do their homework? Who has to make it happen? It's the parents, it's the moms and the dads, and dads are just as broken up by this, by the way. I get a lot of crying dads in my office also. It's pulling parents and children away. When a child comes home with homework that they don't understand and there's no textbook, you can't even help them. What does that do? How does that undermine the parent in the child's eyes? It makes you look, like you aren't smarter than the fifth grader. So this definitely is putting a wedge between parent and child. Anyone else?
Please use the
The
microphone.
bill?
Can you please repeat her question?
Sure. She wants to know what A07994, the Assembly bill. That is a bill that the author is Assemblyman Graff from District 5. It's a very simple bill. It's 14 lines. You can actually understand it. And it is to stop Common Core state standards and race to the top in New York State. And the premise of the bill was to get the conversation going. And believe me, it has.
My first name is Mary, by the way, I'm from East Hampton. We haven't really gotten into this in East Hampton. It's been very, very quiet, so I just came to learn a little bit more.
Good.
Yeah. But I'm just curious about the statement within the bill is to remove Common Core standards from the state of New York
Yes.
educational facilities,
Yes.
as well as all
Race.
monies that would have been allocated to the districts to be given back to the feds.
The race to the top funds are given to the districts over a 4-year period. So it wouldn't be to give back because we could
Stop spending.
We could to stop accepting.
Stop spending. So the bill
Right.
would say,
The bill basically says that we're
Governor Cuomo
remove New York State from Common Core and and to not accept any more funds from race to the top.
and return to,
Local rule.
so whatever curriculum was in place that the districts had been implementing before, go back to that or come up.
Or come up with something new in New York, correct?
Okay, and how many authors does it have?
Well, it's one author, but how many co-signers? 26. And actually, Assemblyman Peter Lopez, Assemblyman Theo, I don't know if you're still here or not, but he has signed on as well. So he signed about 3 weeks ago. And Assemblyman Noj, I don't know his district, I'm sorry, but he's upstate New York. He is also planning on signing the bill as well.
And if the petition is successful on the assembly side in terms of getting accepted, it would then have to be,
We need a companion bill from our senators.
and then it goes to the governor who could veto it.
Yes, but it needs to go through the education committee first in order for it. Yeah, there's an education committee.
So just in terms of the intent, the idea behind this is to show us a state of force and from constituents.
Yes, and it's happening.
Money's gone.
The parents, the moms, the dads, it's happening. Trust me, I cannot begin to tell you. I spoke to Assemblyman Graff, and he told me that Governor Cuomo's office is receiving the information. He's hearing us. It's also important to know that next year is an election year. Every assemblyman and senator and our governor are up for re-election next year. So it's a big year for them. And we got to put the pressure on them. Call. You know what? A lot of people are afraid to make calls or write letters. I have to tell you, if you got in any trouble for contacting elected officials and complaining, my house would have been burned to the ground 18 months ago. For those of you who may not know how to pen a letter to your legislator or a senator, on our website we have templates. It's very easy. All you need to do is go into templates and there's headings, support A07994 for your assemblyman. You open up the document, copy paste, boom, send it email or regular mail. If you don't want to pen one, that's fine. The templates are there to be used to make it as easy as possible for everyone. Yeah, nothing bad. Make an appointment with your assemblyman. Go meet him. Go and talk to him.
I'm taking names tonight.
Okay, good. Anyone else?
I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I hope you got some information that you came here to get. And
I'm Ed Clive from East Bridges. I'm a principal of a building with 1,000 students, the high poverty district. 60% of our kids receive a free lunch, which means about 600 kids a day come through my building. That might be the only meal that they get. We rely heavily on aid through the Common Core. If we opt out, which I'm sure we wouldn't from Common Core, how do we make up that $500,000 that my building so desperately needs? How do we make up that money?
How much is it costing to implement Common Core?
More. More.
That's your answer?
I mean, the fact of the matter is, we still get that funding, and if that just dries up, you know, for AIS, for example, for our kids who haven't met proficiency, those numbers are so high. You know, we have one teacher servicing about 400 kids, and you know, we need any funding we can get. So.
Do you want to answer? Do we like the answer? When I don't have the answers, my husband does.
I think the false assumption is made that because Common Core or Race to the Top will go, that all funding will go. The funding towards Common Core or to push Common Core will go. What we are trying to do is push to go back to how it was, and that includes funding the right. What they've been doing now is giving the $4.3 billion and said, okay, here's a carrot, you do what we want you to do, and we'll give you a lot of funding. I don't know if a lot of people know, Race to the Top D is now out, Race to the Top District. What they're now telling school districts, they can apply for money direct to the government. They don't even have to go through NICED anymore. So they can apply from $20,000 up to, I think, $10 million. But as you know, anytime you apply for something, the strings attached. So the school district we're in Portchester, our superintendent has applied for the $10 million and is willing to do anything. So he's doing the full Engage New York modules. The teachers are literally going from hour to hour. They're getting their modules 2-3 days before they're actually doing the classes. NICED is saying, don't worry because we've got a script for you. And I'm not kidding you, the scripts are, say enthusiastically this. Say this to the student will say that. And there are, you can go to engageny.org and look for it yourself. This is not conspiracy, this is true. So all the money will always come with attachments. So we don't want testing delayed. We don't want to stop some schools getting Race to the Top. We want the whole thing gone. Because once we can take those attachments away and those requirements away, schools like yourself don't have to feel that threat anymore. If I don't comply, I'm not going to get that money. NICED has to step away from this. I personally believe the regions are the biggest problem because they are unaccountable to us as the public. They don't get elected by us, they get elected by the legislators. We have to put pressure on the legislators to say, Regents is up for election, you better put people in place first who are educators or were educators, most of them are not, and put them in place to look after our kids, not after the interests of the Bill Gates or any other corporation, to look after our kids, and that will help you. Thank you.
First of all, it was nice of you to point out in the beginning that it was not the legislature that enacted the Common Core, but it was done administratively. But there were a number of things that the governor asked the legislature to do to improve our chances to get Race to the Top funding. For example, one of them was to increase the number of charter schools in the state of New York. And I wanted to address the funding issue. William Floyd, right? That's right, of course. Because William Floyd does get a fair amount of federal money under the Common Core. But I didn't vote to increase the number of charter schools. I didn't vote for any of that. It was 2009, 2010. We were in the middle of the recession. We had a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit. And there were people looking for every nickel that they could find. They were willing to do anything to try to get that federal money. But I still voted no on a number of those bills. And the reason why I voted no, first of all, is that if you just look at it, it's about our kids. It's not just about money. But if you just were looking at the money, the question that you asked, the implementation of the Common Core costs more than what you get in federal aid. And William Floyd, I have 21 school districts in my assembly district. William Floyd is one of those districts because of the number of school lunches, poverty indices, etc. William Floyd actually gets some money from the federal race at the top. Not enough to pay for its implementation, but if you take the other districts that I represent east of William Floyd, and you noticed it, you mentioned it in your slide, East Quogue doesn't get any money because you don't use the typical school aid formula, which doesn't work that great for Long Island to begin with, or Westchester. But instead, it's Title I. The Title I formula is utilized. And I'm not going to get into all the details of that, but it is based on a number of poverty indices, including reduced lunch program, etc. Our school districts out here, the wealthy Long Island school districts, we don't do very well under Title I. I have very, very few school districts outside of William Floyd that get any or very little race to the top money to begin with under this program, but they still have to implement the Common Core. To me, I voted no in the beginning because it was an unfunded mandate or a partially funded, at best, a partially funded mandate, and I wasn't willing to put that finance alone, not even knowing what was going to come down the road, to put my school districts in that kind of financial bind.
So that means you're gonna sign the bill then, right?
Well, I do intend to sign the bill.
Good. Fantastic.
Somebody Jim Graham is a very good friend of mine.
Love
He sits
Jim
a little
Graham.
bit. But you will need to get
Companion bill.
a companion bill in the Senate. You will need, the governor has the veto power. The best thing you can do to get the legislature to act in both houses is to continue doing what you're doing. This is going to be on the radar screen in Albany this year. The way I describe the way sometimes that things happen in Albany is that you have to make legislative leaders so uncomfortable that it is worse for them to do nothing than it is to do the right thing. And
It is what I live and breathe.
and I have to tell you that the whole thing with Common Core started to bubble up at the end of the legislative session. There really wasn't that much discussion with it at the end of the session. I would say that since the legislature has been in recess, if legislators, assemblymen, and senators are being honest with their constituents, they will tell you that they have heard about nothing more than Common Core. It has become the issue that we hear most about each and every single day. And my last point, I wasn't even going to speak today. I really came here just to listen because I think you didn't get a chance to have someone listen when this was implemented. And listening is very, very important. But I would urge as many of you to come to the meeting at Eastport South Manor on November 26th from 6 o'clock to 8, where the Commissioner of Education, I will be more polite to him. I might not be more polite to him on the 26th, but I will be tonight. But it's important that as many people turn out. It's 2 hours. I realize that not everybody's going to get to speak, but it's important that the major points be raised. And I used to be a town supervisor. I used to be involved in local government, and I can tell you that looking out at the crowd, not if everybody didn't speak, that was okay. But if you could see several in that auditorium hall is probably 1,000 people. That will have as much of an impression as anything that gets said that night. So, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much.
I wasn't planning on speaking. I hate public speaking. But the question that you raised, and we actually happen to be in the same district, the AIS is an unfunded mandate. I recently went to a PTO meeting that was open to the residents. That was about half of Liberty administration, the state taking back funds after they gave them. There was a moment where I can say, okay, with all of the extra testing, there are children who really do have good grades, 80–90%. They would get great scores on their tests in class. These extra tests, the assessments and all of that, they're getting ones and twos. About 70% are now getting ones and twos that should not be. That are being forced to take AIS, which is an unfunded mandate, which even if you don't care so much as to fight the tests, which is not the only problem, refusing the tests will not put your child who may be doing well or maybe on an AP path into AIS. And the kids who need it are now not getting the full benefit of it, and you will be paying for it in your budget votes. And unfortunately, when I pressed my superintendent about that, I asked him whether the extra AIS was budgeted for. And he said the test scores did not come out till the summer, so they did not budget for the extra AIS this past year. They cannot budget assuming what the extra AIS is going to be needed for next year. The way to avoid it, and I got him to say, it is refusing the test. But again, the test is not the only problem. But refusing the test and getting them out of the AIS circle, which is an unfunded mandate which will hit your budgets. 2 years ago, my school had a 12.5% increase, and we are looking to do, on this path, it's going to be just as much coming up. Still fight the poor, absolutely. Refuse the test, because it doesn't do anything for their grades other than take them out of an AP path if they're headed that way, and take the kids that don't need the services into services they don't need.
There's also I've heard a lot of districts telling their parents that if they don't have 95% of the children taking the test this year, they'll lose funding. It's completely false. Right now, New York State is under a waiver for the No Child Left Behind Act. We do not need to show adequate yearly progress this year. That won't go into effect until 2015. So however many kids refuse the test this year, it does not affect your school's funding because we're totally under a waiver for that. So don't let them tell you that. Anyone else? Thank you all so much for coming. And like I said, just please just make sure you do something about it. Thank you.